Welcome back to another edition of the North Star Takes podcast, a breaking news edition. Here with Jacob Liberta and Jackson Lefebvre. It's such big news we had to bring Jackson back on the pod. Minnesota Vikings have officially hired Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as their general manager, obviously coming from the Cleveland Browns front office, experience with the San Francisco 49ers as well. Heck, he's even got experience on Wall Street. So it kind of started off with Ryan Poles, who many had thought to be the favorite for the Vikings to land at general manager. He ends up interviewing with the Bears first, and they keep him in town. They do not let him leave. They give him the contract. He's their general manager, which basically throws Adofo-Mensah into the Vikings' lap. And the more that's come out about this, the more I'm actually good with this, because I had said previously Ryan Poles is my number one guy, but it's kind of coming out that in Chicago, he's wanting all these defensive head coaches to be interviewed. He's wanting a Todd Bowles. He wants Caldwell in there. Like he wants some of these older defensive coordinators, guys that have, aren't a part of like the new trend in the NFL, we'll say. So let's go to Liberta first. Liberta, what's your initial reaction here with the hiring of this general manager?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I know this is kind of out of the box hire when you consider his background. I mean, this guy doesn't even have a Wikipedia page out there, so it's hard to know. But from the things that we've heard, he has a college hoops background. He played basketball once upon a time, and then, like you mentioned, he was on Wall Street, which is crazy. And then you got 7 years with the Niners, another couple with the Browns, but then also a couple economics degrees from Stanford and Princeton. So like this guy's been all over, done a variety of things. So I think this is a really fresh perspective to bring in for the Vikings. I think it's a complete 180 from what Rick was. So for better or worse, I mean, things are going to be different. And I think we'll be on the edge of our seats, at least for this first season, to see what he does with this roster and what he does with this organization. So I'm very excited about this. But again, this could be a huge boom or bust hire. So gotta pump the brakes a little bit on the excitement. But I really love the charisma he brings in a press conference and in interviews, though. So that's another great sign. He seems like a people person. So that's gonna help us a lot too, I think. So yeah, overall pretty excited.
Yeah, Jackson, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like him already. I watched a video of him talking today on Twitter, and he seems like a really well-spoken guy, like you mentioned, Liberta. Also, really well-rounded, interesting guy, which I like. It brings us into a different direction, kind of a modern approach, kind of a Moneyball approach. I saw on Twitter people were saying he comes from like a data analytics side. And I before he got hired, like I originally wanted Poles, like you, Bailey, but I mean, I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't even know who Poles was like a couple weeks ago.
That's fair.
So, and also, it turns out like I was on, at least on Twitter, people were saying that Poles comes from a scouting background, kind of similar to Rick. So I think if we stuck with Poles, it would be kind of a similar GM approach. And you guys both know we need to just completely destroy this organization and rebuild it and give it new life and new breath. And this is a good start, so I love the move.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's nice to have, like Liberta said, an out-of-the-box hire, a guy who's going to come in and look at things differently. Obviously, he's just entrenched in the analytics part of football. It'll be interesting to see who he brings along with him as his assistants, too. People have talked about Catherine Raish, who interviewed with the Minnesota Vikings, Brandon Brown, I think it was Brandon Brown from the Eagles. Potentially bringing him along as his assistant. Like he's got connections to all these other people that have interviewed with the Vikings. So that'll be interesting in and of itself. But I'm kind of curious here. Obviously, like it's great that we have the GM finally settled, but now obviously the next big move is the head coach. And I mean, the Vikings have already interviewed, 8 or 9 different candidates, most of them being, defensive coordinators or having defensive backgrounds. We haven't seen the big fish that we were expecting, like Byron Leftwich, Eric Bieniemy, Doug Peterson. So, I mean, where do you guys think they go from here? I mean, do you think there's a chance that they could still reach out to like a Doug Peterson? It kind of seems like Leftwich is going to Jacksonville. I mean, there hasn't been any news about him really interviewing anywhere. So I guess we'll start with Jackson. What are your thoughts on where we should go next with the head coaching position?
Yeah, well, I don't mind the Wilfs interviewing guys and kind of just getting a feel for what they want. But I hope they bring in our new guy Kwesi and allow him to kind of make the final decision on that. That should be one of the main jobs of the GM is hiring.
Right.
coaches, as well as scouting guys and drafting players. So I hope the Wilfs allow our new guy to come in and influence that hiring decision. But man, I mean, I know you guys both. We need to kind of double down on offense and play to our strengths. Justin Jefferson, Delvin Cook, Adam Thielen. Just our strength is in the offense right now. We need to double down. You guys watched those playoff games, those crazy playoff games last weekend, and the offense was what won it for all those teams, and the quarterback play and the explosive players. So we need to double down on that, and that's why I'm a little bit concerned when I see the Dan Quinns of the world being thrown around. That would be clearly a step backwards for this organization. Just kind of status quo Zimmer era. So we'll see. I do love the GM hire, so I'm kind of hopeful that with this new life, he's going to be able to make the right hiring decision because it is critical.
Yeah, Liberta, how about you?
Yeah, I think Jackson made a lot of great points there. I love that he brought up the playoff games because that's ultimately what drives playoff success, and put yourself in that spot in the first place is really a powerful offense. And I think we have the makings of one right now. I think the personnel is there. Obviously, the quarterback, that's a different situation. But as far as everything surrounding the most important position on your team, it feels like it's all there. So it just needs a GM to come in here, pick the right head coach that can really facilitate that, get the wheels turning, and then also identify a quarterback that can drive everything, to drive the bus. So it could take us all the way. So I think that's a critical thing for this GM to do, is find hopefully the right offensive candidate, but head coach candidate in general that can lead this team, and especially this offense. I think that's really important because it doesn't feel like we're that far away and we need a full-on rebuild. Obviously we're going to have to make some serious changes, but at the same time, we're not starting from scratch. So I think leaning into your young core talent on offense is going to be huge. And I think that starts with who you pick as your head coach, because then you're going to hopefully come together with Kwesi and whoever this new head coach is, and pick a quarterback in the future that hopefully is not Kirk.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you guys about that. But going back to Jackson's point of, seeing names thrown around like Todd Bowles or Dan Quinn, I mean, I really think we dodged a bullet with not getting this Ryan Poles, because it sounds like he's close with Todd Bowles. Dan Quinn got a second interview with the Bears scheduled as soon as they announced the hiring of Ryan Poles. I feel like that was almost a disaster waiting to happen in terms of that. It's hard to know. Like, Dan Quinn could go to Chicago and he could be a good head coach. But like Jackson said, like you've said too, Liberta, it's time to go in a new direction, double down on offense. The relationship with the quarterback is critical, and we've seen that between Zimmer and Kirk Cousins having no relationship at all. Whether it's both their fault, one of their faults, I don't really care at this point because I want them both gone. But and Zimmer's already gone. So, I think just getting an offensive guy in here, and we've talked about, I think the way it stands currently, unless we can somehow get an interview with Leftwich, Raheem Morris is probably still my number one guy. He's got experience coaching both sides of the ball. I know most recently he's been defensive coordinator for the Rams, which Rams defense has been really good so far this postseason. So I think Raheem Morris is up there. I think Doug Peterson would still be up there if we're willing to give him an interview. And then, there's rumors floating around about Jim Harbaugh too yet, that he would maybe have interest in this job. And Kwesi was in the 49ers organization when Harbaugh was coaching there. So there's that sort of connection. So I guess real quick before we get into Kirk Cousins, we'll start with Jackson again here. What are you hoping to see? Who exactly are you hoping to see be the next head coach?
I mean, do I go for who I hope, or realistic? I mean, who I hope is, you guys know, I hope we hire Lane Kiffin.
Yes, Jackson. Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, you know why? Because this entire organization has been way too corporate and bland and risk averse for way too long. And we already hired Kwesi, which is, which seems like a kind of a new era, analytics guy, worked on Wall Street, basketball guy. I love that. Let's double down on that, on the culture, and let's get someone that the Vikings would never hire, and let's bring in Lane Kiffin. I mean, he would be the opposite of the standard coach that the Vikings would normally hire. And he would be a high-powered offense. He's still pretty young. He's in his mid-40s. And I think he'd be great. Now, realistically, I haven't heard that he's even had an interview yet. The only rumor was that the Wolves flew down to Palm Beach, and
Yeah.
I believe he lives near there or something. So that was the only rumor. But out of all the kind of the coaches that they've hired, I mean, there's not a lot that I love. I guess Raheem Morris seems like he'd be a decent fit just because he's still pretty young. He's kind of the CEO guy. He's coached both sides of the ball, even though he is a little more defensive oriented. Like he's currently the DC of the Rams. So I don't really love that. That's the only downside. But yeah, we'll see. I don't. My guy is Lane, and if they hire someone offensively kind of offensive coordinator guy, and he's fairly young, that's kind of who I want.
How about you, Liberta?
Yeah, I like that. I like that polar opposite of Zimmer take. I think that's the direction I want to go in too. I'd love Lane myself as well. I love that you brought that up. And I guess I'd like somebody like that. And I know, like you said, Lane isn't that close to the Vikings. There isn't really any ties there for the most part. So thinking realistically, I would like either Rams guy, whether it be Raheem Morris, just because he has that previous head coaching experience. Even as recently as last year, he's the interim head coach for the Falcons, and then he's coached both sides of the ball. Obviously, he was on the offensive side of the ball for the Falcons during their Super Bowl run, and then now he's been the defensive coordinator at for a couple different teams these last couple of years. So he's got experience doing that too. Players will get up on the table and beat the drum for this guy like a Jalen Ramsey. So I think that says something. But then if you consider those other two guys you brought up, Bailey, with Jim Harbaugh and Doug Peterson, both guys have been to a Super Bowl and played in a lot of big games, and Doug Peterson winning one with Nick Foles, which in hindsight, every time you look back at that, it's like, how did they manage to do that? And now here we are. I mean, Foles is a backup, and he hasn't looked the same ever since. But so that sort of says something about him. And then kind of another guy I'd really like to keep an eye on is probably Kevin O'Connell. We have a video out there. I don't know if you want to go give it a look. It gives you a little background, how much we like him and what would be cause for concern. But I would say with O'Connell, I think he'd be that young offensive mind that you kind of envision the Vikings hopefully going after, being a polar opposite Zimmer. And the fact that the Rams are obviously doing something right there. They've made playoff runs multiple times now. McVay, they make the playoffs every year, except for I think it was 2019? I think they missed it, but that was it. So like the Rams are always good, and so they're doing something right. So I'd like to take something from their success and see if we can turn it into our own here. So I'd also like to keep O'Connell on the radar.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell would be kind of another outside the box, almost risky hire, just given his lack of experience, really. He hasn't called plays in LA, so that'd be a little bit of a concern as well. But let's kind of get into Kirk Cousins here before we decide to wrap it up. I mean, we all kind of feel the same about Kirk. I think we're all ready to move on. But do you guys see Kwesi coming in? Because like there's been rumors that, maybe the Browns would be interested in Kirk Cousins. So do you think Kwesi coming from the Browns organization would come in and look at Kirk differently than maybe like what we do or some fans do? Do you think there's any chance that he'd want to keep him or extend him? What do you think, Liberta?
It's possible. I think it's just because Kirk is the ultimate paper quarterback. Like on paper, it looks great. Look at the PFF rankings. Solid passer rating, woohoo! But it's like on paper, sure, he looks like the guy of the future. But at the same time, it's like the eye test. There's no eye test he could possibly pass for anybody if you're taking your purple glasses off and thinking about it straight. So realistically, I'd hope he wouldn't want to really tie himself to Kirk. But at the same time, you could think of it from another angle, and maybe there's others in the Browns front office that feel like Kirk could be a logical fit there, and then Kwesi, with his familiarity with that organization, could facilitate a trade to send Kirk there to help out his old friends there, Andrew Berry and Glenn Cook and Kevin Stefanski, and then maybe we could in turn get maybe some draft pick compensation, which would be great for him coming into his first NFL draft. So I think that could be a win for us as well. I think that's certainly worth thinking about.
Yeah, that's intriguing. What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. The Browns quarterback situation is kind of up in the air. They have to figure out if they want to offer Baker a new contract or not. And Baker, a lot of people, including myself, believe that he's definitely not worth paying a lot of money for. So yeah, and Stefanski's already coached here, and yeah, I can see him. I can see that trade potentially being brokered. Yeah, I mean that's another. Hopefully, that's another benefit of having Kwesi on the team on as our GM. Um, so yeah, I'd be open to it. But overall, I don't see Kwesi wanting to keep Kirk around. I would say I don't even think that he'll want to keep him around for next season, just because there's we've had him for 4 years now. Look at the stats on winning. You can look at his stats on quarterback play, but look at the stats on winning. That's kind of also another conversation about just Kirk Cousins and in general, but in terms of the GM, I don't see him wanting to. What is the term, like hitch his wagon to Kirk? No way. He's gonna want to try to move him some way. And with this already established relationship that you guys mentioned with the Browns, that's another channel that I think can be opened.
Yeah, that's a really good point Liberta made. I think there's definitely that opportunity there. I think the Browns almost make the most sense of any team, just because I feel like the Denver Broncos are going to go big fish hunting, whether it's you know, Deshaun Watson in a trade or maybe trading up for a quarterback in the draft. Potentially Aaron Rodgers too could be on his way. And this is the one thing I want to say is I hope that, like, if the Packers have a huge shakeup here, and obviously the Bears and Lions are in a rebuild, I really hope these guys don't convince themselves that just because we have a chance to win the division since all these other teams are down, that riding it out with Kirk Cousins and keeping some of these other guys, some of these other veterans that maybe deserve to move on too, I hope they don't convince themselves that that's the way to go, just to maybe win a division and then lose, the first or second playoff game they play in.
Yeah, let's hope we don't get to that. That'd be dumb. That's not thinking long term. That's just getting bought in on an unrealistic dream that you could win a Super Bowl next year. So let's hope we don't do that. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a fear in the back of my mind that I have. That it's like I don't want any scenario where Kirk is here even in 2022.
Yeah, and I would think Kwesi would be forward thinking, and he seems like a very smart guy. Like, I would think he'd be smart enough to think about what's best for the long term future here and how to kind of rebuild on the fly. But like we've said before, there's talent here, but it's just if you can have a really solid draft, I think right away, and maybe find a young quarterback, which obviously is not easy. We know that, but maybe you can get Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, Malik Willis, one of the three, and yeah, maybe you can strike gold. So before we take off here quickly, Jackson, any final thoughts from you on this GM hire and what's to come in the next few days here?
My only thoughts are it's exciting. It's a new era of Vikings football. They made the first, great step in the right direction, and I'm excited. Not often does a team be unless they're like the Jets, have the opportunity to just wipe the slate clean and start over and really build. Start in the right direction and keep it going. So
Yep.
I think this is going to be an exciting off season for us to watch, and I'm really bullish on a team in the coming years.
How about you, Liberta?
Yeah, there's new life. This is certainly something to get excited about. We haven't had this in 8 years, so I think it's time to really buy into this team as far as getting interested in the offseason and all the moves we make, whether you agree with them or not. I think it's going to be interesting how we take shape for 2022 and beyond. And I think what I'm most excited for, I mean, granted, every year I can get excited about the NFL draft, but even more so this year when
Right.
you don't have predictable Rick trading back in the draft. So
Yeah.
you never know what's going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's a great point about the draft. Is it should be super exciting this year. We have no idea what's coming, and really just the offseason in general. It's going to be a whole new look, something we're not really familiar with because, as Vikings fans, during our true, growing up fandom, that was the Zimmer Spielman era. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But we'll have more to come, obviously, once a head coach is hired and once more rumors are out there circulating possibly too. So until next time, thanks for watching, and be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button on this channel. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and leave your comments below on your thoughts of the official hiring of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and what you think this means for who's going to be the next head coach of the Vikings and who you hope to see brought in. So thanks for watching.